I'm one of the developers working on Dwerve. It's a tower defense dungeon crawler RPG, and you can wishlist it on Steam now. While I was streaming Dwerve, one of the most requested things for me to teach how to draw was this cliff right here. I think it's a really great cliff, so let's get to it. Okay, so we can start by going to File, New, and whatever your tiles are in your game, like 16 by 16 or 32 by 32, make that the size of the canvas. So here we go, we have a 16 by 16 canvas, and we're gonna draw within this space. So I put a dot in each of these corners just to show you what's about to happen. Go to View, Tile Mode, and then pick Tile in both axes. Now whatever we draw in here is going to get tiled in every direction. The pixel art program I'm using is called Sprite. Please click the link in the description if you're gonna get it, because if you buy it through Humble, I get a tiny kickback. I'm not sponsored by them. Okay, so now let's pick some colors for these stones. Instead of just choosing gray, what I like to do is either go to blue or red and add a little bit of hue in there. So for example, that looks a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit of blues in there. And then from here, we're gonna create a lighter and a darker version of this. But we could probably use this as our base. So I'm just gonna go to the paint bucket tool and I'm gonna go ahead and color that. And now I like to zoom in a little bit because I'm gonna use the preview to see the tiles, not really this entire area here. So I think by default Alt is a hotkey for color picking. If it's not, you might as well make it Alt. Your finger will be right there. And we'll color pick this color, and then we wanna go a little bit lighter. And as we go lighter, I'm also going to hue shift a little bit more towards the greens. So I'm gonna move just a little bit. Okay, so this will be our lighter color, and we can use this to create highlights. It might be hard for you to draw a rock without sort of having the shape of it. So let's pick a dark color first. I'm gonna Alt select. I'm going to use the eyedropper again to choose that base color, and now I'm gonna go darker. And as I go darker, what I'm going to do is I'm actually gonna go back. I'm gonna go towards back towards the blues. And now something that might make it easier for you to draw these rocks is to make sure you turn pixel perfect on, is to quickly sort of just outline where the stones would be. So for example, I'm going to make this one stone here, and then don't put a gap between stones. So don't do something like this. Also don't put them the same height, offset them a little bit. Let me get rid of that pixel there. So for example, if I'm doing another stone here, I actually want to use some of the same outline, build off of the outline. So another good area for a stone would be right here. See how these two lines meet? And then if we go to the top of the tile, we need to connect it either to the top of this stone or add a stone in between. Now these stones are a very similar size, so we'll probably want to not have all the stones the same size. For example, if I did another stone here, it's too similar in size. So make sure that some stones are big and some are small. Just don't make the size variations too ridiculous. We don't need a stone that tiny. So something you can do that might make it easier to draw the tile map is actually get rid of your grid. And if you get rid of your grid, it might be easier for you to connect these stones. Okay, so I'm gonna put a large stone here since there's a big gap between these two. And now we just have this one area here that needs a little bit of work to look more natural. I think this is a good opportunity to put a small stone. So maybe something like that. Now you see we have this area here, and we could try to add smaller stones in there, but then the pattern becomes too obvious. Another thing we can also do is just have a dark area. It's all right to have areas that are really dark. I'm going to shrink it though, so that way it's not as obvious. But it's okay to, for example, pick corners like maybe this edge here and add a little bit more darkness to it. Your outlines don't have to be the same thickness everywhere, especially when you're doing something like stones. So see how I'm just adding dark spots? And then we can go back to the highlight color and add highlights on top. Now, if you're adding highlights on the left, make sure all your stones have highlights on the left. If you're adding highlights on the right, make sure all your stones have highlights on the right. This will make the lighting look more consistent. I usually like to do the top and then one of the sides. And also when I do a highlight, I don't go all the way to the edge. So for example, I would not do a highlight like this. Instead, what I would do is pull it away from the edge just 1 pixel. And this makes it look like the stone is rounder. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an awesome online learning community with like thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people like you. You can explore new skills or improve your passions. There's a ton of creativity to be had and you can learn just about anything. If you want to become a better artist, I recommend you learn some fundamentals like color theory. Look at all these awesome color theory videos. One of my favorite ones is this one right here. Ariel creates several simple projects that really get you comfortable with color theory. Skillshare is less than $10 a month with the annual subscription, and the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Okay, so I'm just gonna touch up these highlights here, and something that I like to do is don't make your highlights too perfect. So it's okay to, for example, skip a spot and then add a highlight, or do something like this, because the rocks aren't super smooth. Maybe if you're doing bricks, you can make them smoother, but for something like stones, it's okay to, for example, have a highlight here, and it's okay to have a highlight zigzag a little bit. I like to make the stones a little bit more reflective. They just have a little bit of shine. You know how sometimes stones sparkle? I'm gonna pick the highlight color, and I'm gonna make it even brighter, and then I'm gonna go to yellow, and this yellow is gonna really make it look like the sun is bouncing off of it, like it's shimmering. But you could try other colors, for example, blue. And if you want to change, for example, all these colors in your composition, all these yellow colors, turn off contiguous, and then check this out. When I fill that, it updated all of them. Usually a piece of artwork looks better if you have multiple hues in it. So if you have, for example, greens that go to blue or greens that go to yellow, like if you're doing a tree, don't just make the whole tree shades of green, have the top of it a little bit yellow and have the bottom of it a little bit of blue. And that's what we're going to do with this rock too. So when we add shading here, we're going to add blue to the tint of the shading. But for now, I'm just going to improve these highlights here and tell you guys a story. So I just bought a house and I was building a shelf, and I had a piece of wood on top of the shelf, which is dumb, I know. And I was putting books into the shelf, and I look up and a piece of wood fell from the top of the shelf and the corner hit me right in my forehead. And that's why I have this gash on my forehead. It almost looked like I needed stitches, but I don't have health insurance right now, so I figured I would just let it heal. These stones don't really have the best shapes, but as I shade, I'm going to try to fix that. Just a little bit of blue. There we go. I think that's pretty good. Maybe I need to go a little bit lighter. So instead of guessing colors, like trying to go lighter this way, actually that was a pretty good guess. Another way to make sure that these two colors blend better is to go ahead and color pick this color and then lower the alpha to like 50%. I'm gonna do it even less, and click on top of, and then click on top of the color that you're trying to blend it with. So by using alpha, you can have two colors look more similar. Just keep putting them on top of each other and it'll blend them together. So this way, these two now will blend much better. Okay, so let's just go ahead and shade the bottom of each one of these stones. I don't want to go overboard with the shading, but you can use shading to really give the stones some shape, some cool shapes. I'll give you an example. So this stone right here that's really big. When you're shading, you don't have to just go around the edges. We can go up the middle, and then it almost looks like there's a crack in the stone. So you use the shading to create cracks and some aging in there. You see how I'm just you can just sort of almost randomly add this here and there, and it looks like it adds a lot more detail to your stones. I don't want to overdo it though, because then it's going to start getting messy, and that's a mistake that I see very often in new pixel artists. They add too many pixels. So I'm actually going to remove some of these. Another thing we can do if we don't want to remove them is just make them lighter, because the problem isn't that they're there, the problem is that the contrast is too high. So if we just lower the contrast, we can even do this near the edges of the shading. You can have multiple levels to the shading. There we go. Now I blended those details a little bit more into the stones. The contrast isn't as high. I think the stones now have some pretty interesting shapes, and the shimmers on them are very high, but we need to make the darks darker. So you make the lights lighter, and then you make the darks darker. So in here, in these crevices, we need to go darker, and you can go almost fully black in these crevices, but I think that contrast is way too high. So I can't go very dark unless I made these outline colors darker. So let's try going just a little bit dark, and then maybe we'll create more stages of the darkness. So this one, the contrast isn't too high. So we can go ahead and put this around. So to make it look like there's a little bit of texture, feel free to skip a pixel and then add a dot. Kind of like how we did with the highlight here. You skip a pixel and then you continue it. You can do the same thing with not just highlights, you can do the same thing with shading as well. And that kind of gives it a little bit more of a natural look. It gives it a little bit more texture. It starts to look less clean, but in a lot of cases when you're drawing natural stuff, that's not a bad thing. So I'm just going in the corners here, and I think I've gotten all the corners, and we've darkened up the corners. And then we could go even darker if we wanted to. We have to be very selective about going this dark all over. So it would have to be just very few places where we would go this dark. I have to be very selective about this. Damn! I hope yours look as good as mine. So from here, what you would need to do is make a top tile and a bottom tile. And basically what you do is you go back to view and you turn off the tile mode. You don't need the tile mode on anymore. Wait, did I turn it off? Oh, you have to go to none. Oops. Oh my. There we go. And what you can do is you can copy this, Control C, and you can create a new document, or you can go to Sprite, Canvas Size, and here we can increase this as much as we want. By the way, you can just drag out the edges. How cool is that? And then once you do this, you can Control D to deselect, and then Control V to paste the layers. Oh, I forgot to flatten it, so I only copied that one layer. So you can right click on our layer and hit merge down, and it'll merge it with the layer below it. And now this tile is in its own layer. So if we copy it now and paste it, we have all the layers in it. The best program I found for tiling is called Pixel Edit. Pixel Edit is only $9. It's cheaper than Sprite, and you can do almost the same stuff. So in Sprite, what I can do is I can copy this tile and hit Control C and go to Pixel Edit, and then in Pixel Edit we can just hit Control V and paste it. So now what I can do is click this tile placer tool, you hold Control, you click it on your tile, and as you can see on the right here, it got added. Now once it gets added, I can draw this tile around. And the cool thing about this program is now if I go and I update one of these tiles, it updates all of them.
Oh yeah.
And what I can do is I can draw a scene. And let's say this was grass. I can draw grass up here really quickly. I know this is crappy grass. I'm just trying to make a point. And now I can hold Control on top of this tile, and we just made a new one, a grass tile. And now I can paint this across. So the amazing thing about Pixel Edit is that you can draw these scenes and really see what your art looks like. So I'm adding this tile to my Pixel Pete's art assets, which are free to use in your games. There's a link in the description below, and please follow me on itch because you'll get notified when I update the art pack. I'll see you guys next week. Dev Live. If you guys want to support the channel, I've got my own clothing line called Panic Pop. There's a link in the description. I totally got to make Pixel Pete merch like Dev Life or something, right? But that's for another episode.